It was a sunny morning in a quaint suburban neighborhood, and Tom, the house cat, was dozing peacefully on the windowsill of his home. Tom lived with a friendly family who adored him, but he was particularly attached to the cozy kitchen, where he could nap, snack, and soak up the warm rays of sunlight. His life was perfectly ordinary and wonderfully simple, until the day Jerry showed up. The chaos began with a tiny squeak. At first, Tom ignored it, assuming it was just his imagination. But soon, a little gray mouse darted from under the fridge, scurrying across the kitchen floor toward the pantry. Tom, startled out of his nap, stared in disbelief. No mouse had ever dared invade his territory before. He leaped to his feet, eyes wide, his tail twitching with excitement, and perhaps a touch of nervousness. The mouse, of course, was Jerry. Clever and quick-witted, he had just moved into the walls of Tom's house. To him, this place was a paradise of crumbs and cozy hiding spots. He'd heard rumors of a cat that lived here, but he didn't feel the least bit intimidated. After all, he was Jerry. With a cheeky grin, he grabbed a cracker from the pantry shelf, making more noise than necessary as he nibbled away, knowing it would attract Tom's attention. Tom took the bait. He slinked over, trying to be as quiet as possible, his eyes locked on his prey. But as he crept closer, Jerry sprang into action, darting across the floor. Tom pounced, but missed, landing in an empty, clattering pile of pots and pans. Jerry scampered into a tiny hole in the wall, just large enough to fit his tiny body, but too small for Tom to squeeze through. From the safety of his hiding place, Jerry poked his head out and gave Tom a taunting wave. Tom, furious but still hopeful, swatted his paw at the mouse hole, trying to reach him. Jerry chuckled, knowing he had the upper hand. A few days had passed since Jerry's arrival, and the household was already starting to feel the effects of Tom and Jerry's rivalry. Pots and pans clanged mysteriously in the kitchen, odd thumping sounds echoed through the walls, and snacks were disappearing faster than usual. Tom was especially annoyed because Jerry seemed to grow bolder with each passing day, stealing food right from under his nose. One evening, Jerry noticed a marvelous sight through a crack in the pantry door, a huge block of cheese. It glistened in the light, looking creamy and irresistible. But this was no ordinary cheese. It was a rare Gouda, a delicacy Tom's owners had bought for a family dinner. To Jerry, it was the ultimate prize. He decided that he simply had to have it. Tom, however, was on high alert. He sensed that Jerry was up to something and was determined to stop him once and for all. For hours, Tom patrolled the kitchen, his eyes never straying far from the pantry door. But Jerry was as crafty as ever. He devised a plan to distract Tom so he could nab the cheese without being caught. Late that night, while Tom dozed off by the stove, Jerry sprang into action. He created a decoy Jerry out of a ball of yarn, tied it to a long string, and slowly dangled it in front of Tom's nose. Tom's eyes snapped open, and he instantly swiped at the mouse, without realizing it was a fake. When he missed, he became obsessed, batting and pouncing, following the yarn as Jerry pulled it across the floor. With Tom distracted, Jerry dashed into the pantry. He had mere seconds to get the cheese, so he didn't hesitate. He found a small cart, actually a toy wagon, and loaded the cheese onto it, making his way back to his hideout. The block was huge for his tiny size, so it took all his strength to move it even a few inches at a time. But he was determined to bring the Gouda home. Meanwhile, Tom finally realized he'd been tricked and let out a frustrated hiss. He turned just in time to see Jerry disappearing around the corner with the cheese. This was the last straw. He charged after him, slipping and sliding across the tile floor as Jerry raced back to his hole. The two tore through the house in a high-speed chase, knocking over chairs, sliding across tables, and leaving a trail of crumbs in their wake. Jerry, quick and nimble, darted under the couch, around table legs, and through gaps too small for Tom to follow. But Tom was relentless, leaping over obstacles and closing in with every step. Finally, just as Tom reached out to grab him, Jerry made a daring leap and dove into his hole, dragging the cheese with him. Tom skidded to a stop, growling in frustration as he clawed at the wall. Jerry, on the other side, took a triumphant bite of Gouda, savoring the taste of victory. But this wasn't the end. Oh no! Tom wasn't one to give up so easily, and as he sat outside Jerry's hole, he began to hatch his next plan. For both cat and mouse, each victory and each failure only made them more determined, sharpening their wits and deepening their rivalry. Winter had arrived, and the house was colder than usual. Tom's family had set up a small indoor skating rink in the basement for fun, and the icy floor fascinated Jerry. He had never seen anything like it, and the idea of gliding around on the ice seemed too fun to resist. Tom, noticing Jerry's interest in the rink, saw another opportunity. He skated out onto the ice with clumsy confidence, hoping to lure Jerry out. As he twirled around, trying to look graceful, Jerry was quick to pick up on the challenge. With a daring grin, he skated onto the ice as well, ready to turn this into a high-speed chase. But ice skating wasn't as easy as either of them expected. As Tom attempted to catch Jerry, he kept slipping, his paws skidding out from under him. He twirled and tumbled, crashing into the walls while Jerry nimbly zigzagged and glided, making figure eights around Tom. Seeing his chance to turn the tables, Jerry decided to have a little fun. He grabbed a broomstick lying nearby and used it like a hockey stick, batting small objects toward Tom as he skated. Tom, caught off guard, dodged the objects while struggling to keep his balance. The scene turned into a slapstick hockey match, with Jerry deftly batting objects left and right while Tom scrambled to avoid them. After a few minutes, Tom finally steadied himself, determined to catch Jerry once and for all. He launched into a full-speed glide toward him, ready to pounce. But just as he reached Jerry, his paw slipped and he went sliding straight into the edge of the rink. He collided with the wall, and with a loud thud, he found himself sprawled out on the ice, dizzy and defeated. Jerry, giggling, skated over, tapped Tom on the nose with his makeshift hockey stick, and then glided back off the ice. With a final cheeky wave, he disappeared into his hole, leaving Tom to nurse his bruised ego. The rivalry between Tom and Jerry was only getting more intense. Tom's elaborate traps and plans kept falling short, but each one made him more determined. Jerry, on the other hand, found joy in outsmarting Tom and relished each small victory. For both of them, every chase was a new adventure, and they both knew there were many more to come. Episode 5, The Garden Showdown. It was springtime, and Tom's family had started a vegetable garden in the backyard. Fresh carrots, juicy tomatoes, and crisp lettuce were all growing under the warm sun. Jerry, thrilled by the prospect of fresh veggies, saw this as his next treasure trove. But Tom was onto him. He'd seen Jerry peeking out the window and knew exactly what the little mouse had in mind. That afternoon, Jerry scampered outside, his mouth watering as he sniffed the aroma of fresh produce. But Tom had prepared the ultimate garden fortress, complete with barriers of pots, strategically placed sprinklers, and a sign that read, "No mice allowed." Tom sat proudly near the entrance, confident that this time, he'd finally kept Jerry out. But Jerry wasn't about to give up. He inspected the setup carefully, noting every obstacle and trap. With a mischievous grin, he began his plan. First, he slipped behind a row of tomato plants and carefully loosened the garden hose until water started trickling out, creating a small, slippery puddle. Seeing Tom distracted, Jerry dashed forward and grabbed a tomato, carrying it toward his hiding spot. Tom, realizing he'd been duped, sprinted after Jerry, only to slip on the puddle. He crashed into a row of pots, causing them to topple over one by one. By the time Tom recovered, Jerry had already disappeared with his prize. Furious, Tom tried again, setting up another blockade with even more pots and a rake in front of the lettuce patch. But Jerry was ready. He took the garden hose, set it to spray, and pointed it at Tom. With one quick twist of the nozzle, water burst out, soaking Tom head to tail. Jerry chuckled as he watched Tom splutter and shake off the water, knowing he'd won again. The garden soon looked more like a battleground, with tomato splatters, overturned pots, and a very grumpy Tom. Finally, after much back and forth, Jerry managed to sneak off with a single, triumphant carrot. As he nibbled his prize, he looked back at Tom, who was too exhausted to chase him any longer. Episode 6. The House of Mirrors, a local carnival, had set up nearby, and Tom's family decided to take him along for a fun day out. Tom, however, had other things on his mind, namely, getting a little break from his daily mouse-chasing routine. But what he didn't realize was that Jerry had sneaked along, hiding in the picnic basket. As the family strolled around the fairgrounds, Jerry peeked out and spotted a House of Mirrors tent. Instantly, he knew this was the perfect place for some mischief. Slipping away from the family, Tom wandered into the House of Mirrors, curious about the strange reflections surrounding him. He was captivated by the way each mirror distorted his shape. One made him look extra tall and thin, another stretched his face into a funny shape. Just as he was starting to have a little fun, he noticed a familiar pair of ears peeking out from behind a mirror.
It was Jerry.
Tom sprang into action, sprinting after Jerry through the maze of mirrors. But the reflections made things tricky. Every time Tom thought he'd caught up to Jerry, he'd slam into a mirror, his paw prints leaving smudges all over the glass. Episode 11. The time travel clock. One day, Tom's family brought home an old, mysterious-looking grandfather clock they found at an antique shop. Intrigued, Tom watched as the family set up the clock in the living room, with its large swinging pendulum and strange gears. Jerry, curious as always, decided to check it out too. As they both got close to the clock, something unusual happened. The gears whirred, the pendulum swung faster, and with a flash of light, they were transported back in time. Tom and Jerry found themselves in an old medieval castle, with Tom wearing a knight's helmet and Jerry donning a tiny jester hat. Confused but fascinated, they wandered the castle halls, finding tapestries, armor, and, to Jerry's delight, tables piled high with food. Tom, however, quickly realized that he could use this setting to finally catch Jerry once and for all. As Jerry scurried through the castle halls, Tom chased him, wielding a broom like a medieval lance. But Jerry was quick to adapt, leading Tom on a wild goose chase through secret passageways, trapdoors, and hidden rooms. At one point, Jerry even donned a tiny crown he found in the king's chambers, claiming himself king of the castle and taunting Tom with royal ways. Their chase eventually led them back to the room with the mysterious clock. Just as Tom was about to catch Jerry, the clock's gears whirred again, and they were whisked back to the present day, landing right back in their cozy living room. Dazed but unharmed, Tom and Jerry looked around, half expecting to see castle walls and tapestries still surrounding them. Realizing they were home, they both shared a moment of disbelief before Jerry gave Tom a little salute and darted back into his hole. Tom, tired from the adventure, couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of their medieval escapade, already wondering where their next chase might lead. It was a rainy day, and Tom was lounging in the kitchen, half asleep, as his family prepared to host a dinner party. The table was filled with delicious dishes, a roast turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, and, most importantly, a mountain of cheese-filled appetizers. Jerry peeked out from his hole, his eyes widening as he beheld the feast. He had to get his paws on that cheese. As soon as the coast was clear, Jerry made his move. He darted to the table and began filling his tiny arms with as much cheese as he could carry. But just as he was about to scurry off, Tom spotted him. The chase was on. Tom lunged across the table, nearly knocking over a bowl of salad as he tried to grab Jerry, who dodged and darted with agility. Jerry, knowing he couldn't outrun Tom forever, came up with a plan. He dashed under the table and quickly tied Tom's shoelaces together. When Tom tried to give chase, he tripped and landed face first in a bowl of mashed potatoes, his fur covered in creamy white fluff. Jerry couldn't help but snicker as he climbed back onto the table to swipe some more snacks. Determined not to let Jerry get away, Tom wiped himself off and tried again. He snuck around the side, positioning a colander as a makeshift trap, waiting for Jerry to approach. But Jerry, ever observant, saw right through it. He tossed a cherry tomato in the opposite direction, causing Tom to pounce and trap himself under the colander instead. With the kitchen in disarray and Tom hopelessly tangled in various kitchen gadgets, Jerry triumphantly carried his cheese haul back to his hole. By the time the family returned to find their dinner table a mess, Jerry was safe and sound, enjoying a well-deserved snack. Tom, once again defeated, sighed and vowed that next time, things would be different.